Hello, welcome in or welcome back to my channel. My name is Deb from DG Reads, and it is time for a weekend challenge. As I'm filming this, it is Saturday morning, Memorial Day weekend. I think there's going to be a delay in probably me having time in my schedule to get this up because we're entering TBR season and wrapping up readathons and starting new readathons. But I've had a rough reading week, a lot of lack of motivation, not a lot of guidance on what I need to pick up next, and that's kind of resulted in me just not picking things up or reading a few pages in a few different books during the day, but finishing nothing all week, and it's been a bit of a drag. So I figured this weekend, without a ton of plans for actually getting out and about, this would be a good time for a weekend challenge. If you're not familiar, I have this little jar of reading prompts, and I don't know which one I will be pulling for this time, but each one has a prompt on it, some easier, some harder, some giving more guidance, some giving complete open guidance, but tells me how I need to read. Anyway, I'm hoping this jar has the magic that I need to kind of inspire my reading this weekend. I'm currently participating in Escape the Readathon, which is a fantastic month-long readathon hosted by Lexie at Books with Lexie, and we happen to be in a stage of the game. Since the readathon's over by the time you're seeing this, I can't really spoil anything too much, but at the stage of the game we're currently in, there's no real prompts we're reading for, it's just about reading. So I haven't had a lot of guidance there in terms of what books to pick up to help my team out. So this is leaving me with way too many options, and I'm hoping for a prompt that narrows things down just a bit, but we'll see what the prompt is going to be. So without further ado, let's find out. I got one. All right, I can work with this. The prompt is to read Aardvark books, so books that I received from the Aardvark book box. It's a very cloudy day, hence the really bad lighting for a Saturday morning, and it's a good day, I think, to make some coffee, wrap up on the sofa with Kylie. She just got her rabies shot yesterday, so I was worried she wasn't going to be feeling well this morning, but so far she seems okay. She definitely wanting to hang out with me and do some reading. So apart from a nail appointment in a couple hours, I am going to go ahead and figure out what book to start with and see how many books I actually have on my Aardvark shelf to get to, and check back in with you once I have some decisions made. Okay, I'm back faster than expected because it turns out I don't actually have that many unread Aardvark books, and that is because they have immaculate taste, and a lot of times when they put books on offer, I've already read the ones I'm interested in. So I figured I'd show you what books I'm working with, and then we will see what I want to read. I have Dissolution by Nicholas Binge. This one is about a woman who learns her husband is losing his memory, but it turns out it's actually someone removing the memories as opposed to dementia, and this has me super intrigued. I have Immaculate Conception by Ling Ling Wang. This is my most recent acquisition, and this is the author who wrote Natural Beauty, which I loved. This one I'm sure has to do with weird horror things, and it says, what if you could enter the mind of the person you love the most? And finally, I have The Clinic by Kate Quinn. This is the one that I purchased from Aardvark that has been the longest on my shelf, and it has to do with sisters, addiction, a potential suicide at a rehab facility, but the sister doesn't believe that's necessarily what happened, I think. So this one is calling to me as well. So I actually think I'm going to start here because it is a little bit chunky, but the print is definitely not small in here. And like I said, this one's been on my shelf for the longest. I do have the audiobook for this one, which I don't for my two newest acquisitions. So that's helping me to make the decision to pick this one up fastest. And then I don't think I will necessarily hit all these books in the space of one weekend, but I am contemplating potentially cheating just a tad and picking up a book that I would have ordered from Aardvark if I didn't already have a copy, because I am currently reading one. So I'll leave you with that little bit of intrigue. It's intriguing to me anyway. So I'll make that decision later, depending on how it's going with the rest of this book stack and what the weekend's looking like. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and get some coffee, get to reading, and to snuggling my pup. Checking back in with you, I have now spent a little bit of time reading this morning physically, and then I went and got my nails done. So I have new nails ready for June for the teal Gale Weavers. And then before I came back home, since my nail place is in walking distance, I had walked there, and then I walked down a ways to the Asian bakery to pick up some goodies for the weekend. And then now that I'm back home, I really don't have plans to wander any further than taking Kylie out for a walk. So that's what I've been up to this morning. It is now nearly 11 o'clock. I do need to do some social media stuff. My last vlog just went live and I haven't posted anything on Bookstagram or shared that or anything. So that's my next step. But I did want to provide you with an update on The Clinic by Kate Quinn, my first aardvark book for this vlog. And in the process of reading this morning with my coffee for a little while and then taking the audiobook with me as I went to get my nails done and took the walk, I am now at about 45% into this one and I'm liking it so far. In this book, we're actually following two people. Meg is an undercover detective working in Vegas. She is uncovering people doing shady things in Vegas, and on the side, she's also an addict. Something went wrong on a job. We don't really have the details of that, and she had pain pills that were prescribed to her, but now she's addicted to them, and she's also relying very heavily on alcohol. Her sister is a famous musician, singer, and the sisters were pretty much out of touch. Just recently, Meg's sister had reached out to her, but before anything can come of that, she gets the news via the news. She doesn't even get a phone call. She finds out really that her sister is in this rehab and that her sister has died of a suspected overdose or suicide. And she doesn't believe that this is something her sister did intentionally. It was a heroin overdose. Her sister has never used heroin, and she really wants answers. So using her undercover skills, she manages to go in without anyone knowing she is this woman Haley's sister, and she's battling her addiction in a setting where you're supposed to be working on becoming sober. She has no interest in becoming sober, but she's in this rough position of not having access to alcohol, not having access to her drugs necessarily. And so there's a lot going on that front. She's getting to know all the people in this particular rehab. It's a fancy place that it's like top tier 5-star hotel type accommodations, but with a focus on becoming sober. So it's very expensive. It has a very high A-list level clientele, and the police don't really have information about who's in the rehab aside from they do know who found the body, and therefore they know one of the people. Being on the inside, Meg's able to kind of get to know everyone. The other POV we're following is Cara, and she is the manager. Her experience lies in the hospitality industry and catering to rich people, and she was tapped to come into this business by the man, the doctor who created this. And she's the one interfacing with the police quite often, and we're getting more kind of behind the scenes from her. And she hasn't been there that long, so she doesn't know all the inner workings of this clinic, but it's an interesting extra POV to be getting, although I think we're getting more from Meg, and I'm enjoying Meg's pieces probably a little bit more, but I am very much enjoying this. I think it's a good one for me because of the mental health rep, the addiction rep, and all of that going on in here. And I'm very curious what we're going to wind up finding out about Haley. I would consider this a very slow burn at this stage, but it's keeping me hooked. I've been doing it on audio, and that's been good. I think I'm going to switch back as I sit with my iced coffee for a little bit and go back to reading this in print because I got through the first 60 pages really quickly this morning reading physically. So I'm hoping that this should be an easy, quick read as we're going into the afternoon, and hopefully I can finish it by early to mid-afternoon and get going on another book. It's now a little after 4, so it took me a little bit longer than I expected to get back to you with final thoughts, but I did take a reading break to film my June TBR, which will have already gone up before this. So at least I was being productive in the time I wasn't reading. But overall, I really liked The Clinic. I had a good time with it. It kept my attention really well. I audiobooked for quite a while. I switched over to physical in large chunks of it as well, and I think it worked really well for me in both formats. I wouldn't say this ever got to breakneck, couldn't put it down fully speed in terms of the pacing, but it did ramp up quite a bit in the second half. There were definite dangers happening. There were consequences for various characters, and ultimately twists and turns that I didn't fully see coming. I think having Meg have this addiction and have this reluctance to getting sober really helped kind of keep some of the mystery going in here because we don't know how reliable she is as a narrator. We learn very early on in the book that there's something that Meg's sister wanted to tell her about their childhood, and there's potentially some repressed memories for Meg as well, and the treatment for her addiction woman in this clinic is potentially going to uncover some of that, but not everything is as she thinks it is. And her going through withdrawals and her going through this treatment that's maybe not always on the up and up. There's a lot of things that really had me questioning what we knew, what we didn't know, what we could trust. And I think that was balanced out quite well in here. There is a note at the end of this that there is a story online, I haven't looked at it yet, about the author's experience with going to rehab. So I'm assuming we're getting some own voices perspectives going on in here to some extent when it comes to things like addiction. But like I said, I haven't looked at that yet, but I am curious about it to check it out a little bit more. I think this did a good job of looking at mental health, and from what I know, it felt legitimate in that regard. In terms of the treatments and the rehab portions, can't tell you how much what these people were doing at this particular clinic necessarily is science-based or not, but I think it was all balanced out really well in here. This wound up being a very strong 4-star read for me, and I'm glad to have been finally pushed to pick this back up. So this was a good success to start things off. I think I maybe am going to go with Immaculate Conception next because I don't have the audiobook for that one, and I'm kind of in a sit down and just read physically mood. So my goal is to hopefully get going on that one maybe, and then we'll see. I do have a multitude of audiobook credits if I wind up not wanting to physically read as many books as I don't already have an audiobook for, if that made any sense. But Kylie's ready for a nap. I might take a break a little bit and kind of veg out with TV as well, but I think it's getting sunny. We're kind of getting that afternoon heat hitting, and so I think getting a cold drink, sitting and reading for a little while, and then taking a break sounds like a perfect plan. It's been like 24 hours since last I updated you. It is now Sunday evening, late afternoon, somewhere in there. My plans definitely took a change after last I talked to you. Nothing bad, just my plan was to read Immaculate Conception physically for a while before taking a break. I made it a whole, I think, 20 pages into it before I realized I was just too tired to be physically reading. My eyes just kept wanting to close. So I kind of gave up on reading for the rest of yesterday. So this morning I decided to go for a change of pace because I'm still thinking I might try that one physically. I might wind up picking up the audiobook for it. But in the meantime, I definitely picked up the audiobook for Dissolution. And so far this is going pretty well. The audio for this is fantastic. I would definitely recommend that as an option. The book is made up of a lot of transcripts in places, and they have 2 different narrators for these sections, and it goes back and forth. So you get the male POV voice and the female POV voice. And I do like that about it. It is sometimes difficult in transcripts in an audiobook format. So I do like that here, and how they decided to handle this one. So this book starts us off kind of in the middle without really knowing what's going on. We are talking to Maggie, who is the main character of this story, and she's been approached by this man, and she has a husband, Stanley, who has been losing memory. And the assumption was that it was something natural with aging and so forth. But what she learns is she's approached by this man who tells her there's more to the story. Someone is intentionally removing memories from him, and there's a way to get them back. As we're opening the book, we're getting this discussion between her and this man talking about where she is, what she's doing, why she's there. And he's basically helping her to insert herself into her husband's memories. And it's a really interesting take on the idea of how memory impacts the world, how it can be used for different things. And do we trust this person who is telling her all of this or not? And I think this one is the right amount of weird and kind of timey-wimey in ways, and kind of just confusing, but in a way that keeps me intrigued to keep reading and find out more. And I kind of like that we did start in the middle of the action, and she's very confused about what's happening. This whole process is impacting her memory of things and her ability to kind of understand what's going on. So we're kind of learning with her as this man is trying to remind her why she's confused, what she's up to, and all of this. And that's giving us an interesting way to learn this world. So I've been going back and forth a little bit with the print copy, mostly listening to audiobook. I wound up taking a break today to work on editing and getting some videos ready for next week that need to go out. And so that's what's kind of taken up a big chunk of today. But I am in the mood to go ahead and finish this up. Hopefully I can finish this up tonight. And then with tomorrow being being Memorial Day, I have the day off, and hopefully I can get through Immaculate Conception tomorrow. So that's currently the plan. I think my focus has been a little bit off. I did get better sleep last night. I slept in a little bit this morning. I actually put on the audiobook for this one and listened to it for a while, and then realized when I woke up I had missed a big chunk. So rewound and physically read kind of to remind myself where I'd left off in the middle there where I fell back asleep for a while. But it's about time to start thinking about getting dinner ready. So I'm going to put back on the audiobook and go ahead and keep reading and get back to you hopefully this evening. If not, then hopefully first thing in the morning tomorrow with final thoughts on this book. It's now Sunday morning, and I didn't make quite as much progress as I had meant to yesterday in my reading. I got distracted with Discord and with reading sprints, which actually slowed me down a little bit, but that's okay because it's been a productive reading morning. It's a little bit cooler this morning. It's been a good time to just sit with my coffee and with a puppy in my lap and do some reading. So I do have some updates. I finished up Dissolution. And overall, I had a good time with this one. I think there were a few places where it felt like it slowed for me a little bit with this type of story, with the way they're kind of going back and forth in time through these memories. I think there was a few places where it lost my attention just a little bit, and partially I think that is because I was tired reading it, but I do really think that the audiobook is a great way to go with this one. I think that kept me very engaged with the way the narrative worked in here. I think it's such a creative kind of storytelling mechanism, which I can't really tell you about because that would be spoilery, but it really combines a couple different narrative styles. I think I can say that, and has different voices involved through that, and there's a lot of questioning what's going on in here. There's a lot where I was kind of wondering if I had missed something or if it was the story, just the nature of the story a little bit gets confusing in places, but I think it's intentionally that way where you're meant to be questioning what's real, what's not, what the actual timeline of things is. So I think you need to go into this wanting not necessarily to have all the answers. It went a few directions I didn't expect. It's definitely sci-fi, but it has a few kind of fantasy elements that get thrown in here as well that I didn't fully feel like I understood that part of it. But overall, this gets a solid 4-star for me. I did really enjoy it. It does kind of cement the idea this is an author that I definitely can enjoy. With his previous book, Ascension, I liked the premise. I liked some of the concept, but I didn't feel like I connected in with the characters well enough in that one. So I saw the promise in his creative brain and the writing and everything, but that one just fell short for me. This one, I did feel a lot more connected to our characters and cared a lot more about what was going on with them. And this wound up being a good success. And then I was trapped on the couch with a puppy in my lap, so I did pick back up Immaculate Conception, and I did wind up going ahead and getting an audiobook for this one, and I've been immersion reading it with it in my hands and also listening to it, and that has gotten me much more enmeshed in this world and much more interested. Again, I was previously only 20 pages in, and I was falling asleep reading it, which was entirely me being overtired, not the book, so I'm not holding that against it. With this book, we are following Enka, and she is someone who wants to be an artist, and she has opportunities in her life come about where she gets to attempt to be an artist, and she's been part of the fringe, the outer, I guess a lower class, I would call it, and she hasn't had access to see art and to experience art in the same way someone with a lot of privilege has. In art school, she meets Mathilde, who is a performance artist, and she becomes rather obsessed with her and with being her friend, with being her kind of assistant to her artwork, and almost prioritizing, or definitely prioritizing, her friend over her own art. And this is a relationship that is not always healthy, I would say. Mathilde needs a lot of attention, a lot of support. She has mental health issues going on. There's other stuff going on with her. And the art she produces can be very traumatizing and disturbing for the reader, if not for our characters. And then they kind of lose touch a little bit, and there's a bit of a divide going on with them. Enka gets involved with this group that has created something called Scaffold, and the Scaffold is something that can link one person's consciousness with another's. A brain from one person can be downloaded into the brain of another person, and it's meant to be the idea that This will allow people to experience others' lives, to walk in their shoes, potentially have uses for therapy or who knows what all else. Enka gets involved with the man who's in charge of this project and gets to create some art around this concept as part of their publicity, and that is all very interesting. From the synopsis, we know that the scaffold is somehow eventually going to come into play to allow Enka to connect with Mathilde. And I'm currently about 40% of the way through, and we haven't reached that point yet, but we're getting all of the setup. We're going back and forth in time a little bit to when Enka met Mathilde in school and her history with her art, and more of the present day moments as well, which isn't a huge time divide. We're not talking historical fiction versus the present, but there's definitely a age gap going on between the two different timelines. This is definitely weird. The art is disturbing and disgusting. The performance art they're talking about in here quite frequently. The idea of the whole linking of brains is very fascinating. The art is fascinating, even as it is disgusting at times. So I am definitely hooked on this. Now that I'm further into it, it's going to be a very quick, easy read, and I'm looking forward to seeing how this goes. So I suspect that I should be able to finish this up pretty quickly this afternoon. It's now just 11 a.m. So I'm thinking I can finish this by early afternoon, and then that will officially clear my backlog of Aardvark books, which is a very good feeling. But I might maybe try to throw one more book in here. We shall see, and I'll let you know about that when we get to it. I have officially finished my Aardvark TBR and it feels good. This one I did really enjoy. It wasn't a 5-star read for me just because it did lose my attention in a few places. But I think it had so many good conversations in here about identity, about what makes someone themselves versus having a different entity kind of implanted. There's a lot about art in here. What is art? What makes a performance art? And what makes someone creative? How does their upbringing influence that? How does their feelings about themselves influence things? And I really enjoyed how this wound up wrapping up. I think the intersection between technology and art in here was interesting as well. And it's definitely weird. It's definitely at times disturbing. And I think if that's the type of book that you want to read, this is a good one to pick up. So this was another 4-star solid read for me. So since it is still the weekend and I've got a little bit more time, I'm currently in a game with my team where we just need pages. So that makes life easy. I can just kind of read anything at this point. But I decided just to throw one extra book in here because it's one that I am already reading and really enjoying, and that is When the Wolf Comes Home by Nat Cassidy. And this is obviously not an Aardvark book, it is a paperback, and I received this in my Nightworm subscription. But if I hadn't been getting a copy from them, this would have been top of my list of what to pick up from Aardvark. So I figured since it is available through their program, it still kind of fits in here. This is an auto read author for me. I really went into this without knowing much about it other than it was Nat Cassidy, and I had already pre-ordered a copy. I canceled that pre-order when I knew I was going to be getting a copy here. And I did also get a gifted audiobook copy from Macmillan Audio. So I've been consuming this in a mix of print and audio, and I am about halfway in, I think is where I am currently. We're following Jess, and she is a struggling actress. She's trying to make ends meet. She has a very low-end restaurant job, and she's having a bad night. As we meet her, she has some rough things happen to her at work, and then on top of that, she finds this little boy, and he seems to be scared. He seems to be in trouble, and she decides she needs to help him out. And then things go wild. Things that don't seem possible start happening. There's dangers that appear to be coming after the both of them, and they wind up going on the run. And really, that's all I want to kind of say about this one in terms of the plot, because it just went ways that I didn't expect given the wolf title and wolf cover. I was expecting this to be a more wolfy read, if that makes some level of sense. But I think this one's intentionally kind of subverting ideas and realities, and just kind of a book that you need to kind of go on for the ride. It's definitely got gory moments. It's definitely got edge of your seat moments. It's got a lot of things that I'm questioning and wondering what's real, what's not. And I'm having a great time with it. So this is my next objective, is to go ahead and binge read this and finish it up and then wrap up this vlog. So this was the bonus book that I was hoping to kind of get back into this weekend. And I realized when I pulled an aardvark prompt that limited my book options for the weekend, but I think I can justify in my head why this would work. Okay, I've now finished up When the Wolf Comes Home, and I had a fantastic time with this. It wasn't a full 5-star read for me. It did lose my attention in a few places. I think this goes through stages, and there's 4 different parts to the book itself, and it lost me a little bit in part 4. Part 4 takes it a little bit more in an ambiguous direction, and I didn't think that was necessarily 100% needed for the story, but as is often the case with his books, there's an afterword talking about the personal meaning behind the story, and that really drove home a lot of the concepts in here, the dynamics of the whole family situation, the weirdness of the book, and all of that. It just pulled together quite a lot, and ultimately this is getting a solid 4-star for me. That seems to be the theme of this particular vlog. So I didn't find any new 5-star reads, but I had a fantastic reading weekend reading aardvark books and a semi-aardvark book. I think the character dynamics in here were really good. I think the weirdness of it really worked for me. I do very much emphasize looking at trigger warnings because there are a lot in here dealing with child issues, parent issues, a lot of things in here that really can be triggering. So I would highly recommend checking out a more detailed list. But with that, I am going to go ahead and wrap up this vlog. This really wound up being a great stack of books, and I'm really glad that Aardvark came up in my challenge jar. I was a little bit worried about it at first because I knew I didn't have too many Aardvark books to choose from, and that meant I would have very little say in what I was reading this weekend. And honestly, my reading vibes were a little off the first day or two, but today has been a fantastic day of binge reading and getting through some great books, and the weekend as a whole as well. So let me know in the comments below, have you read any of these books? Are any of them on your TBR? And if you get the Aardvark box, what have been some of your favorite that have come from their selections? And if you've made it this far and you don't have anything to comment, leave me an Aardvark emoji. Is that a possibility? I think so. If not, then an animal emoji of some sort to let me know that you were here. If you could hit that like button below, I would surely appreciate it. And subscribe if you're interested in more of my weekend reading challenges, more of my book reviews, and more of my bookish content in general. But for now, I'll leave you here and see you real soon in a new video.